her drive.
Okay, I just wanted to like get to the jump.
Is it
line.
Lauren?
Yeah,
I think so.
Or not.
But make sure that, yeah, I can still be co-host.
I mean, I can only.
We can always do that too. later.
Yeah, just what, right?
So I guess I'll start it. And then I turn on our cameras.
Well, I could forward you, I'll send you the email too.
You want me to drive you?
I mean, that works. I'll just, I mean, if we can get to that, that works, but this way you'll have it too, if that's.
Okay. Sally, can you give us control of this computer?
No. Please do.
Is it Lauren? No, so it will be the dais. Or is it lectern? No, that changes the camera view, but you'll have to go to main
I love it, like on the people that are.
and then you'll have to change it to. Yeah. Like that. Is it working? Is that yours?
I did.
Yes, I had to.
Well,
it's fine. Did you-
Where they just placed it and it was totally looks like a
Larry
Go outside.
Feldman. I love that they just got some anonymous thing, like it's found its home. Yeah, we're lectern.
I got like.
Yes, that's fine.
Everyone to see it.
No, it's okay. Oh, you just killed me. Emily's already in Zoom too, she can share, but
Okay, I could email them.
Yeah, I can also, if you email it to me, I can share it.
We're not up here.
Good for you. I like read it verbatim.
can you share the? I was like, I did at the beginning and now, but then I forget things. So I'm like,
Not sure if we can share that.
oh, they've changed the name.
Is this all the people that are online or is it?
Are we ready? We're ready.
All right, yes.
I hereby call to order the Thursday, June 1st, 2023 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Sally, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Gleason. Commissioner Rasmus.
Here.
Commissioner Stabile.
Here.
Commissioner Tain.
Here.
Commissioner Withrow.
Here.
Wonderful, thank you. Cheryl distributed the meetings from the minutes from our May 18th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Any comments, corrections, or do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Wonderful. And at this time, I would just like to take a moment. As you may or may not know, this is Susan Lee's last day here at the Town of Frisco. So we'd like to take a moment to thank her for her outstanding work here. Susan has been with Frisco since 2018, and in the last 5 years has been an integral leader in implementing our community plan update, complete streets update, marina upgrades and master planning, has been critical in facilitating code updates to usher in workforce housing and many, many more projects that will have a positive impact on our town. I'm confident in speaking on behalf of the Planning Commission that we will miss your calm demeanor, enthusiasm for planning and all that you've done for the town. So we would like to thank you for your dedication and commitment to the town of Frisco, Susan.
Thank you so much.
And we will miss you very, very much.
Well, it's been wonderful.
Well, you will do great at your next adventure. They're lucky to have you.
So,
All right, at this time, I will open up the floor to public comment. If there is anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, now is your opportunity. If you're online, please raise your hand, and if you're in the chambers, you can speak at the podium now. All right, I'm seeing no public comment, so I've closed the public comment portion of tonight's meeting and move on to agenda items. We have one agenda item tabled from the May 18th, 2023 meeting, which is planning file number MAJ-23-001, a sketch plan review of the major site plan application for a new mixed-use affordable housing development. CU-23-002, a conditional use application to allow ground floor residential in mixed-use zone district, and CU-23-003, a conditional use application to allow for less than 20% mix of uses in the mixed zone district. Located at 101 West Main Street, Lot B1, West Frisco, 70 sub number 2. Applicant Andy Stabile with Alan Guerrero Architect. And I will.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
With that announcement, I just want to step up and say I need to recuse myself from this item as I am affiliated with this project.
You have been recused, Mr. Stabile.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and now I will turn it over to staff. Emily, will you please give us your presentation?
Yes. Okay. All right, thank you. So tonight we have a sketch plan application for 101 West Main Street. There are 3 applications that you will be reviewing tonight, but as you all know, the Planning Commission does not make any formal approvals at this time. You'll be providing feedback on the materials that were provided in your packet. So just to provide a little background and description, the applicant is proposing a new mixed-use affordable housing development at 101 West Main Street. The project involves 54 deed-restricted residential units and just over 4,000 square feet of non-residential space. The subject property is a 0.83 acre lot located in the mixed-use zone district. The existing site consists of the West Main Professional Building and holds approximately 20 business tenants. The property is surrounded by other mixed-use district properties, with the property to the north zoned residential medium density. The applicant has applied for a major site plan application. They have also applied for the 2 conditional use applications. In the mixed-use zone district, for properties fronting Main Street, residential uses on the ground floor are conditional use. And then properties located in the mixed-use zone district are also required to be a mixture of uses, with each use making up of no less than 20% of the total gross floor area of all other uses within the property. So with that, the applicant is proposing residential use on the ground floor of the new proposed building and commercial space that makes up 11.7% of total gross floor area. Therefore, the conditional use applications are required and are required to be reviewed concurrently with the major site plan application. This is just a project rendering and a sketch view provided by the applicant. And then I'll provide a little update and background on the Affordable Housing Development Incentive Program, which the applicant is proposing to utilize with this development. The Affordable Housing Development Incentive Program encourages the preservation or development of new affordable housing units. This is achieved through residential development incentives in exchange for deed restriction of all of the housing units on the property. And then so with this, each dwelling unit shall be deed restricted with an average AMI not to exceed 100% for the project. This ordinance was adopted earlier this year and was intended to encourage affordable housing development. So like I said, the applicant is proposing to utilize this designation and therefore will be able to receive certain zoning flexibilities, which I'll go through. Starting with dimensional standards, this is zoned mixed use. And the density for this lot would be 12 units. However, the applicant is proposing to utilize the density bonus regulations set forth in the town code to reach 54 residential units. This means that they are proposing 42 bonus units, all of which are to be deed restricted. For lot coverage, the maximum lot coverage in the mixed use zone district is 60%. However, with the affordable housing development incentives, there is a 20% increase allowed in the lot coverage, and therefore the site is allowed up to 80% of lot coverage. The applicant is proposing a lot coverage of 65% at this time. There are also setback incentives with this affordable housing incentive program. With this incentive, the applicant is required to meet a 3-foot front yard, 5-foot side yard, and a 5-foot rear yard setback. The application is meeting this requirement. And then another thing to know is that the development is meeting the 25-foot setback requirement from the 10 Mile Creek, which runs along the northern edge of the property. The proposal appears to be meeting the height requirements as well. However, a roof plan will be required at the time of final submittal, and then all other dimensional standards are being met. So moving on, just to provide more information on the conditional uses, residential uses in the mixed use zone districts are required to be, or if they're along on the ground floor, they're required to get approval of the conditional use. And then the mixture of uses, like I said, they're asking for 11.7% of commercial space, which is less than the 20% required, and therefore asking for the conditional use. The applicants provided narratives in their, that was included in the staff report and packet. But overall, there are 6 specific criteria that must be met in order to approve both conditional use requests. Like I said, they provide the narratives to show how they feel they meet those criteria, and then staff also provided responses with that. Staff generally feels that the proposed conditional use requests are furthering the intent of the Frisco Community Plan by adding the affordable housing units, and then also achieves the intent of the mixed use district by creating a transitional area between the central core commercial area of Main Street and the residential surrounding properties. And then staff recommends that the Planning Commission discuss these conditional use requests with the applicant. Moving on to development standards, the applicant is proposing vehicular access from Creekside Drive and then internal sidewalks connecting to the public right-of-way along Creekside Drive and along Main Street, with the affordable housing incentives offered. And with this case, the 100% affordable, all offered at rent, the development is able to utilize certain parking relief incentives. The requirements that apply to this project are half a parking space per unit for studios and 1-bedrooms, 1 space per unit for 2-bedroom units, and 2 parking spaces per 3 bedrooms or greater. So the proposed development is a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units. Per the standards listed, the development is required to provide 40 residential parking spaces, which includes the 10 visitor parking spaces that are required for the number of units. The development is also required to provide 9 non-residential spaces due to the area and the size of the non-residential / commercial space that they're proposing. So with that, in the mixed use, those are the incentives provided in the affordable housing ordinance. There's also further incentives provided in the mixed use district for non-overnight parking, and they can get a reduction based on the linear frontage along the public right-of-way of Main Street. So the on-street parking credits outlined in the code allow for 1 parking space reduction for every 25 feet of frontage. because the development has 170 feet of frontage along Main Street, they are eligible for a reduction of 7 spaces, and that's for the 7 non-residential spaces. So bringing the requirements from 9 to 2 for the non-residential component of the site plan.
Sorry, do you mind if I stop you right there?
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky to outline, so
So that 41, that's just for the residential aspect of the project?
they're required 40 for the residential. They are showing 44 spaces in the parking garage. So they also provided, the applicant provided a different calculation using other incentives of the affordable housing ordinance. Staff used a part of that and a part of the standard mixed use on-street parking criteria that's been in the code for quite a bit of time to get the number that we have meeting the requirements. So I have a little bit more, let me see.
Okay, sorry. Keep
So
going.
they're
Yeah.
proposing parking in an underground garage. The submittal materials show 44 spaces within this parking structure. 40 spaces are required for the residential units that they're proposing based on the incentives outlined in the Affordable Housing Development Incentive Program. And then per the non-residential parking on-street credits provided, 2 non-residential spaces are required. So that's 42 spaces. They're providing 44 spaces in the garage. I think that further details will need to be provided on where the parking is being allocated and for which specific uses are required. Like I said, the narrative shows a little bit different of a calculation and offered using on-street parking for the overnight visitor spaces. However, I think based on other incentives in the town code, they can utilize the on-space parking for that.
Okay, so are they getting?
On-street parking.
I'm so confused. Are
There's
they,
a lot
so
yeah.
the parking along Main Street, you said it was like 7 spaces or something?
So there's 11 spaces along.
And they get a credit for 7.
So per
Yeah. I
the
was
section of the
I thought
town
they were
code, which
using
I
that
can
to
bring
park.
up if you want to read it.
Yeah.
For every 25 feet of frontage along Main Street in the mixed use zone district
Where parking exists.
where parking exists, so that parking has to be adjacent to the property in the right of way. For every 25 feet, you get 1 parking reduction for non-residential, non-overnight parking spaces. And this has been in the code this isn't part of the affordable incentives. So they're required to have 9 non-residential parking spaces based on their square footage of commercial space that they're proposing. So 170 divided by 25 allows for a 7 space reduction.
So they
resulting
only
in-
need to represent 2 that are already there.
Right.
They're 2,
Because
so.
when I read it, I was like, I thought they were parking those 13 or 11 spots.
Obviously, they don't need all 7 because they have 44, so really they only need 5.
You just need 2. So the commercial component requires 9, but their on-street parking gives them a credit for 7. So they need 2 on site and they're providing more than that in their
They're
parking
providing
garage.
4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so where the confusion is coming into play with what was provided in the narrative, per the parking requirements in the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. So there's the requirements based on number of residential units. That's cut and dry. That's the 40 residential spaces required. There's also up to 20% of the required overnight parking can be provided on street within that ordinance. However, I didn't feel that calculation worked as well as the one provided in the on-street credits for the mixed use zone district. And I can have the applicant come forward afterwards and kind of provide their analysis of parking. And that's something that we'll have to further analyze and review and just really ensure that the parking is being met per the code.
Okay, but to be clear, none of the on-street parking credits are gonna be overnight parking.
Correct.
They're just for the commercial uses. In your
It's-
analysis.
Yes, in the
Okay.
staff analysis, that's how we determined.
Parking rules that are on Main Street would apply still, like you can't park from
Yeah.
What,
Correct. It would be
Yeah, 2 to
standard
6,
public
okay.
parking.
because I misread that as well in the staff report and I thought they were using that parking to kind of meet the requirement. And I was like,
There's
They
There's
could.
different incentives. It could be applied in that situation if they wanted it to be, but it could not be provided for.
like it's,
Those incentives, yeah.
there's no incentive though saying that those 11 spots could become parking spots for residential in there.
So there is.
There is.
In,
So it is an option in the Affordable Housing Development Code to be able to utilize that incentive.
Well, when would we know which incentive they're trying to use? Like, we're trying to vote on a conditional
Right,
use, so it's
so-
like, are they gonna flip flop halfway through?
And because this is sketch level, I felt that, you know, this is something that could be provided in more detail and work with the applicant on this calculation, because I think in staff's analysis, it makes more sense to be able to provide the reduction based on the current on-street parking and provide the parking on site for the development.
and
So
just,
I don't know if that explains it well.
it does, if they just, if in their future, you know, when they come together and say, this is the way I'm reviewing the parking and this is the way the applicant's proposing the parking. If the applicant does want to propose overnight parking on Main Street or on any right of way, they'll need to come forward with like a maintenance and a license agreement that we work through with Public Works so that we make sure we have a system in place for removing snow and managing the cars. So far, we weren't looking at that. If that is the case, we'll have to hear from them. Then we would need this other kind of maintenance program license agreement to come into play.
All right, we'll let you finish your
Okay.
presentation and hold our
That's,
question.
that was the trickiest part, and I think hopefully it makes more sense now. As far as landscaping and snow storage, the application appears to be meeting these standards. So for landscaping, 20% reduction in plant material quantities and a 50% reduction in the caliper of size requirements is allowed. And like I said, they are meeting those requirements. And then the site plan, and it's hard to see on this rendering, but the site plan shows a trash enclosure on the north side of the site adjacent to the parking garage entrance. They will need to provide the details on the enclosure in a letter from the waste management company stating that they will have adequate access to the enclosure.
Can you show that on the map, please?
It is right in this corner. So this is the access from Creekside Drive. The enclosure is right here.
Thank you.
Here are some renderings of elevations. So with the Affordable Housing Development Incentive, building articulation standards are not required on the non-public right-of-way facades. The application is meeting this requirement. The two facades on the screen are the south elevation and the west elevation, so both of the public facing facades. Additionally, the application needs to meet 2 instead of the typical 4 of the specified articulation standards along each facade. So this includes a variation in the building materials, window sizes, roof planes, those typical criteria that you analyze. So while the application appears to meet these standards, staff would like the Planning Commission to discuss the proposed building facades, the materials, and the duplicity of the design. I will say that no specific building materials were provided at this time. Here are a few more renderings, just a 3D view. And the last section we have are the bulk standards. So per the regulations with the incentive program, bulk clean encroachments are allowed up to the ratio of 500 cubic feet per 10,000 square feet of lot area. And then with the bulk envelopes measured at a 45-degree angle. The applicant is proposing 1,808 cubic feet of bulk plain encroachments, where 1,812 cubic feet is permitted based on the incentives. And then staff recommends Planning Commission comment on the proposed bulk plain encroachments. And with that, that's all I have. I know the applicant would like to share some materials. If you would like to hear from them first, otherwise we can do questions, however you'd like to proceed.
Do you guys have questions for staff or should we move?
I do.
Let's just get questions for staff out of the way. Lena, why don't we start with you?
Okay. About the bike path, is there a bike path over there? Or it would this, is there one? I don't even know. There is?
On the other side of the street.
No, it's on the east side of the street, but everybody parks there. It's supposed to be the beginning of the bike path that would take you.
Creek side. Oh, no, I'm talking about the rear of the property along the river.
No, sorry.
So there's just, is there gonna be because I saw that there was an easement. Is there an easement along the river for walkways or?
There is.
There is, but it's in the river or the 10 Mile Creek.
I believe the existing easement, maybe we'll let the applicant answer, but I believe the existing easement is below the high water line.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. But is there a path being proposed there? At least this, whatever this is?
So,
This,
yeah, so that's a sidewalk path. This is the access for vehicles.
okay, so
Into the
there is a
garage.
path. This is a pedestrian path.
Right.
Okay.
There's like-
But it doesn't connect to anything. It's not like there's a path along the river back there. No, okay. For the record, we're not approving the conditional use permit, so we're just providing comment, right?
Right. All of this is sketch level, so
Okay. I see improvements in that setback.
I don't know what that is. Sorry, you guys.
Well, that's okay. And that setback from the top of bank or that 25-foot setback, there's like that walkway, there's retaining walls, there's landscaping. Is that allowed? There's a transformer.
all right, let me pull up the site plan. Oh. I don't know. Okay, I think this will be easier to pull up. Okay.
So I see a walkway, retaining wall,
Mhm.
transformer. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, does that, because that's a 25-foot non-disturbance area for the river, the wetlands.
Right, I guess I'd have to confirm with our setback definition in the town code on what structures are permitted within that.
Okay,
They may need a wetland water body disturbance plan permit for that.
yeah, okay. And then my next question is, is this in the floodplain in any way? No, no FEMA permitting process?
No.
No.
And so when I looked at the landscape plan, and I could be wrong because the property lines are hard to see, but is there landscaping being proposed off-site?
So I will have the applicant speak to that. I think they had some questions that they wanted to ask the planning commission on their thoughts on plantings in the right of way.
Okay. And I know that, the land use application is separate from everything else, but for just some basic understanding, is there a development agreement is in place that's public information?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Is there a development agreement? I guess is the town somehow a partner in this project?
Yeah, so the town council approved a development agreement with an HP. And that is public and it was a part of the last council agenda. And you may-
Okay,
Oh, sorry. Yes, it is public information. It was approved at the last council meeting.
okay.
And if you go to the website, you can click on.
Okay,
copy
and
of
I
it.
can look it up, but I'm just curious whether the town is a partner in this or the town is selling the land or somehow, I mean, the land is private currently. I guess I'm
It-
just curious how,
Would be privately held in this case.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Patrick, questions for staff? Ira, questions for staff?
The first slide a simple, I'm sure it's just a clerical error. The first slide that went up showed the property line in a blue line, but it looked like it was totally shifted into the condos to the right of the property. Can you go back to the very first slide?
That's
shows
just
the-
a GIS map, so
That-
it's
all right.
not showing it accurately.
Okay,
There's
no
always a
problem. Then
slight variation in what's actually on site.
Okay. And for staff, no questions at this time. Thank you.
And I have no questions either. So Megan, are you presenting for us this evening?
Suzanne and I are both going to.
All
present.
right, well, Suzanne and Megan, please step to the podium. Welcome.
Okay. Can you share for me? Thank you. Thank you very much for your time tonight, commissioners. I'm Megan Tustin with Norris Design, and I'm here with Suzanne from Alangara. We also have joining us remotely the applicant, being represented by Neil and Lauren. And the applicant is NHP Foundation. So I'm going to take a second to introduce them as I also introduce this project. But yes, thank you. We're really excited to be here. This is an awesome project for the town and our community. You want to go to the next slide, Emily? Thanks. We are here today really because we have a dire need for housing within Summit County. This is pulled straight from the last housing assessment, and you can see that our current need in 2023 countywide is nearly 3,000 additional units. So we're proud to be standing here making, as much of a dent in that as we can. And with that said, I will turn over this next slide to either Neil or Lauren to introduce themselves remotely, who they are. I think that's important with this application and with the understanding that this is a partnership with the town of Frisco as well. And they've been working really hard and doing a lot of due diligence with other members within our community. So. I'll just keep going. Neil and Lauren are online.
Neil, you're muted.
The NH,
Let me know.
oh, there he is. Great.
Okay, I'm sorry that the dog's back barking in the background. The NHP Foundation is a national affordable housing nonprofit developer that grew out of the congressionally chartered National Housing Partnership, which was founded to help rebuild the nation's urban centers after the riots in 67. We've been in existence for 35 years. We've developed about 18,000 units of workforce housing across the country. And we provide, in addition to, affordable housing for the workforce, resident services that help people better their lives, whether it's through improved health outcomes, financial literacy, stepping up to home ownership, and the like. I've been a resident, at least part-time, in Summit County for a while now. And, this project really sort of originated, as I, would go for coffee and, coffee shop wouldn't be open because they couldn't get enough folks to work that day, or things were closed early. And so many people I knew were complaining about the inability to get housing. So the idea to put housing in the center of Frisco, where there is some transit, where there are employers who need workers, is really sort of the genesis of this project. And since we grew out of the National Housing Partnership, our model is to work in partnership and bring capacity to local partners such as the town. And we've shared all of our numbers and the program, and we've discussed extensively with town council and town staff about how this building should be programmed. And that's something that we intend to do beyond just coming to the Planning Commission. We're working very closely with the town and hope to continue that on the Galena Street site that we are also have site control that the town and the county bought for workforce housing. And we're really, really happy to be here. And we look forward to working with all of you.
All right.
Oh,
Thank,
I just want to, there is something that says long-term affordability. And I think it's an important point because the NHP's approach to workforce housing and the housing that we build is that we want to own it forever and we want it to be affordable forever. This is not going to be a project that in 15 years becomes market rate condos. That's the commitment that we've made to the town, and it's our nonprofit mission.
all right. Well, thank you, Neil. I'm just going to kind of go through this. Thanks for the introduction. We really wanted to kind of let you know where we are at too in terms of the process. We are funding this project pursuing low-income housing tax credits, the LIHTC tax credits, as well as state and federal funding and local partnerships where needed. And then our timeline for this really, ultimately, the end goal is to have construction in early 2025. So a lot of the timing between Planning Commission and the LIHTC funding, there's different cycles. There's some complicated things going on there, but we're really syncing those up as much as possible in order to get this project built as soon as possible. And this is a picture of the site as it currently stands, and also kind of a cool view of Frisco, really. I love that you can see the lake in the background. What you're looking at is Main Street running down the right-hand side and Creekside Drive running across the bottom of the slide. And just a little bit more context as to where we are here. One of the reasons, as Neil touched on, that we thought that this was a really good site for housing is the walkability to Main Street. You can see the half mile and the 1 mile, and you can walk to a large portion of the town in just that area. So that's really important to us in terms of access and quality in terms of trailheads and how to get around the town as well. Here's a little bit closer view. You can see here that, again, our site is oriented very close to on Main Street, kind of the connection between the west end of Main Street and the east end of Main Street, where we're actually, I would say this building really bridges that gap. But this gateway, really what we're hoping with this is that this building, as outlined very well in the community plan, really looks to further enhance the entrance to the town. It's located at the very first stop sign when you get off the highway, if you're going to get off the highway here. And it's also located very close to two transit routes, one that will take you directly to Copper Mountain and one that'll take you back to the transfer center to Frisco to connect into the larger transfer center for the whole county with Summit Stage. And our site plan, I will try to kind of touch on some of the things that we're already coming up with this site plan, but you can see here, our site plan really, one of our main goals is to connect from Main Street through back to 10 Mile Creek. We are proposing relotting and creating an easement, a public easement in the back, not in the water, but actually on the land where in the future, well, not in the future, there could possibly be a larger trail system that's in line with the trail plan for the town of Frisco, but also have immediate access to the public, to the river. There is a 25-foot setback. It's a stream setback, and we will work, with the town to figure out how to make some improvements in that area. We are proposing just a soft surface path back there in order to keep it a little bit more natural feeling. And we are also proposing some landscaping off-site in the front right-of-way along Main Street. And that's primarily because that's a really wide right-of-way. The right-of-way on West Main Street is 180 feet wide. So if we didn't start any landscaping until we got to our property line, we felt that just from a general aesthetics point of view, that wouldn't fit well. And that's not what we want this project to be. We want this project to fit with the town of Frisco and with the character. So we're borrowing from some of the work that's been done in the right of way just a little bit further to the west, where you kind of see some of the benches and things like that. We also want our kind of main plaza area on our site, which you'll see kind of those pink trees. That's our main plaza area. We want to bring that and connect that to Main Street as well. So just kind of as a technical note, all of the landscaping shown in that area is not necessarily counted for the landscaping requirements. It's just something that we'd like to work with the town in order to have this project really feel that sense of place. Like was touched on, 54 sites, we have 41 parking. I can let Suzanne probably talk a little bit more about the parking, but I do think that that's something, being at sketch plan, we wanted to definitely have a conversation and hear your points of view on that. Having sat through and listened to some of the back and forth that's gone into the new workforce housing affordable overlay, we want to be sensitive to the fact that parking was one of the biggest discussion points in that. And we do think that there could be a need. And if now is the time to secure it, we would like to talk with you about also utilizing some of those parking spaces in the front for permit only overnight parking. And I mean, that's not a requirement. It's just something that we would like to talk about and see how we want to best move forward. And like I said, we have a lot of community spaces as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne now to talk more about the architecture and how that fits with the town as well.
Good evening. Suzanne Allen Sabo with Allen Garrett Architecture. Thank you, Susan and Emily, and good luck. Emily, you did a great job. As many of you know, our team's comprised of a lot of longtime locals. And we're thrilled to partner with such a great team on this forward-thinking and exciting project. We've been impressed with NHP and what this nonprofit is bringing to our community, and specifically this project. Regarding the design, it's been great to utilize some of the elements in the new 100% affordable housing incentives program, including the increased lot coverage, parking, and bulk plane encroachments. And regarding the parking, we agree with Emily's analysis. I think that makes a lot of sense. We didn't have a chance to talk about that before this meeting, but now that I've heard it, I was like, yeah, that completely makes sense. So to go in that direction rather than the direction we were heading now. So I mean, this is gonna be short and sweet, but let me know if you have questions. I'm sure Patrick has architectural questions. So.
Thanks. Is that it, or should we move to questions?
Yeah, sounds
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
Ira, we're gonna start with you. Do you have questions for the applicant at this time?
Oh, I didn't know I could.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Oh.
sorry. Will you flip to the last page on the
Sorry,
slide?
I didn't even
I'm
know I was
excited.
supposed to be doing something here.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Sorry.
just want you
Thank
guys
you.
to see it. It's fun.
We spent the time.
Yeah.
I'm live. You hear me?
Yeah, I believe we're just looking at a picture. There's nothing to go along with it, or?
So,
It's a picture's worth
You
a
know what?
thousand words.
Yeah, so it's a view through, yeah, stop right there. So one of the things that we wanted to do is connect Main Street back to the creek behind. And so visually through the building, the connection in the two buildings, you can see through, and you can actually walk through underneath the bridges that connect you from one building to the other, or one side to the other. And the public can walk through there and have access to the creek, which is pretty neat, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then I just wanted to finish up. Will you go to the next slide? Sorry, you guys. This is just a slide we wanted to touch really briefly on the conditional uses and the nature of the asks, and partly because the mixture of uses and moving away from that 80-20, there's a real life implication behind why that was asked. And it has to do with LIHTC funding and how affordable housing projects are funded. Funding for projects that are affordable, people that fund that do not fund commercial. So we have a gap in our funding. And honestly, the square footage that you see is there because of a partnership with the county in order to better support mental health in our community. So that there's a reason, you know, we think it's a great ad, but I want to make sure that's really clear because it's a really important part of the why behind the ask. It really comes down to how to get this built. And then the other part that I wanted to just touch on is the ground floor residential. We want to make sure that, you know, that anything facing Main Street is not residential. So there would be that public facing part. And then here's my big finale, the next slide. Yeah, see, I want you guys to see that, right? So, thank you very much. And Ira, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, Ira, you're live for questions.
Okay, first, I'm very excited about the project. I mean, the need for housing can't be understated. So going to my questions, I think you just answered the first one. There will be some commercial, right, on the Main Street facing ground floor. Is that what I understood?
Correct.
Okay, so that takes care of that question. Very impressive number that was thrown out that you've created over the years, 18,000 units of housing. Do all those units of housing remain under ownership of NHP, or have any ever been sold?
Neil,
You're muted, but yes, some have been sold. Neil will talk more about that.
Yeah, when the current leadership of NHP, including myself, came in about 12 or 13 years ago, there were a few projects that we didn't think we could do justice to that we did sell, but we did sell them with a affordable housing covenant on them.
So in other words, they've always remained in that affordable slot of ownership.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we've never sold it out of an affordable program.
Okay, I know we were talking about parking earlier. Is any of the public parking in the underground garage?
No public, that's going to be just for the residents.
And so the residents would have some kind of swipe access. That's a restricted access.
Yes.
Okay. It's probably further down construction, but I think you already know the answer to this. Would this project be single metered, or would each unit have individual utility metering?
Each unit would be individually metered.
Okay. I think that's it for my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira. Patrick, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, can we go back to the site plan for a second, please? The one with the pink trees on. Lovely. Yes, thanks. So you mentioned bike parking, and then I see that there's 11 parking spaces on the street. This is kind of an interesting topic because we've just had this conversation recently about trying to reduce the amount of cars driving around.
We can't hear.
Can't hear?
No, it's very faint.
It's green. I don't know.
Talking to that one.
Try this one. Okay. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, we've talked a lot with town council and amongst ourselves about trying to reduce parking. And I think that, you know, the codes that you guys have abided by do that. I'm still concerned a little bit, as much as I love this project, that people are going to bring 2 and XYZ cars and their motorcycles and all their toys and everything else. So I think that's kind of a concern, but you know, the bicycle thing, can you point out where the bicycle parking actually is? It says
Sure.
here that it's on the street.
We have, yep, Emily's circling one kind of component. We have bike parking in the plaza and in the rear of the place of the building on the east side. That's where we have our main bike parking stalls. So We really don't have a lot of room in the front unless we put it in the right of way, which would have to be a conversation with the town of Frisco to put anything in the right of way like that. I'm sure we'd be open to it if that's something that planning commission would want us to explore. And then there is bike storage actually internally in the parking garage as well.
Okay, great. And then I guess when I look at this site plan off the back, because the driveway goes to a subterranean parking garage,
Correct.
that's a railing situation. So you basically go through the plaza. If you're talking about the connection to the river, you go through the plaza here and you turn right and you go on that sidewalk.
You turn right, you go down a few stairs. I think it's about 6 stairs, and then you'd go on that path. Yes.
So I would suggest that's an ADA compliance problem.
Sure.
Looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we can make it work.
It's not that many stairs.
No, we could figure that out better. It's a good suggestion.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, okay, let's see. So I know that there's a big grade change, right, from Main Street to the site.
Yeah.
Is it really possible to connect that plaza space the way you've shown it? Is it like?
Yeah, it is. What we are doing because of the previous disturbance on this site is we're using the road grade as a historic grade. And so because of that grade change in the way the site currently looks, what we're doing is we're going to utilize that. There will actually be parking there. And then what you're looking at as that plaza walkout is over the parking. So the parking you won't see from Main Street.
Basically level 1 is at street level.
Correct.
You're filling it
Well,
in somehow?
we're putting the parking there essentially. So we're not filling in the site. The parking's gonna go there, but it's gonna get kind of built on top of,
Oh, okay.
if that makes
A
sense.
bit of fill to make it all work, 'cause it does drop off pretty rapid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parking
Okay.
happens. So, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, come on over here. So we can just stand up here together.
You're welcome to sit here, please.
What about the trees in the planter boxes? Are those part of the like landscaping count? Is that decorative? Is that extra? Is that seasonal?
Yeah, that's part of the landscaping count. That would be not seasonal. They would be trees that will grow in a container variety for their lifetime. The 2 that are outside the property line do not count, but the other ones would.
Oh, in the description of the bulk plan, I didn't follow. Are they in compliance or not? Yes,
Based on the incentive program, yeah, they're fine.
okay.
They have like 4 extra cubic feet or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty close.
And Suzanne or Megan, what goes over the height limit? There's some roof elements that go over the height limit. Is it just like mechanical equipment or no?
No,
Is it-
there are, a couple spots that are pretty minor, but then there are 2 units that face Main Street that stick out partially. And then there's a unit that's on the downhill side facing west. That's down sort of on the northwest end of the building on the west side, that the gable sticks out.
And to
That's the
clarify, that's a
bulk
bulk
plane,
plane. We
not
actually are
something-
not exceeding the
bulk plane.
height
Oh,
limit
no,
at
we're-
all. We're not
Yeah,
utilizing
that's
that.
just the bulk plane. You were asking about the bulk plane, right?
I was asking about the height. There
Oh,
was
I'm so sorry. I'm so
some
sorry.
Roof elements that go over the height limit unless I completely misread the plan.
The height, we're at 40, well, like 48'10" and we're allowed 49 and a half, 49.
The site rendering or the elevation shown in the submitted plans, the line. I know what you're talking about. Let me just.
And so that building height where we're kind of almost to the max, we're, 8 inches below the max or 10 inches below the max. Is just the area that we stepped up kind of in the center of the building in order to break up those ridge lines. So you can kind of see that piece in the center there.
Yeah.
That's the piece that's the highest. Everything else is 4 or 5 feet lower than that.
So that element in the west elevation in the center, is that not above the height limit? No?
No.
Okay.
No, and the thing is, we're calculating the grade, like Megan said, it's sort of like you took a string line from Main Street down to basically almost the creek. And that would be your existing grade. We're not counting the big hole that's there currently, so. Our existing grade isn't actually what you see out there right now. It's what used to be there before they dug that giant hole and put the cheese grater in there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I guess if that could be better depicted.
A room plan.
Lowest point on the site though.
So we do have a provision of our code, the way we actually define building height is pre-construction grade. And in this case, it was disturbed. And so our code offers an alternative way of measuring it. And this has always been in there, you know, Article 9 definitions for building height. You can take your existing elevation from the adjacent right of way. So that's what they're doing in this case, and we allow it.
So the adjacent right of way becomes the existing grade?
That would become the base elevation for building height.
Okay. Cool. So there's 4 commercial spaces, is that right?
That's
And that do you anticipate having 4 tenants? Because I heard you only talk about 2.
I don't
Or is that like?
know if that's determined yet. We have, like I was saying, the commercial spaces is a public-private partnership right now with Summit County, and they would like that space to support mental health. So the number of tenants, I can't really say right now.
Like
but-
all 4 spaces?
Yes.
And you're working on funding.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Purchase or rent?
I don't know. I
Would
think
be
it's
rental.
rent, yes.
It would be rental office spaces for behavioral and mental health therapists is what we've been working with Summit County on. Sorry, I should have introduced myself. Lauren Avioli with the NHP Foundation.
And we are also working with the town to talk to the workforce, the State Workforce Center, to see if they would like to be here as opposed to in a rebuilt project on Galena Street. But you know, we're still sort of putting all that together at this point. As you know, Megan had noted, you know, commercial doesn't really work well with affordable housing, but you know, the town has indicated that it's important, so we're doing what we can to try and make it work. And you know, working with the town, with the workforce center, working with the county, in having a mental health facility. As right now, many of Summit County's mental health providers are currently actually renting in the cheese grater in the building at pretty low rates, and the county didn't feel that they would be able to find other places to rent. So we're happy to work with them to try and get that done.
Yeah, and I think we're at 11.7% on our commercial right now.
Okay. Just kind of a random question, but is there a reason for you guys to own part of the 10 Mile Creek? Or is the town interested in acquiring the portion of the creek? I mean, I guess. I'll just throw
We've,
that out there.
you know, other than the fact that it currently comes with the building, you know, we have no particular reason to own it.
Yeah, maybe it could be an easement because, you know, we'd want to maintain our open space probably.
I was just gonna say the only thing would be is if we might need it to not hit that 80% site coverage.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I can't see a reason. I mean, I think it's a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from our perspective, you know, from the get-go, you know, we've envisioned a public access to the river here. Because it's difficult, you know, I mean, for folks to get to it, and why not? So, you know, how that's implemented, whether that means an easement or some other method, we're completely open to it, to whatever the town thinks works best for it.
Okay. And what else was I gonna ask about? Okay, so these 2 questions for Suzanne. One is, on the commercial spaces facing Main Street, like when you look at the building on that elevation, and I don't know, Emily, if it's easy for you to pull it up. It doesn't scream commercial. And I just don't know, if you, like that to me, I don't know, maybe with signage or
I think
whatever.
the materials could change, and similar to some of the comments I think Patrick gave us on 9097 80 West Main. Initially, I think, yeah, we could definitely look at that and detailing it differently. I agree with that.
Making the entrances, I don't know, more so that, like, oh yeah, I should go there for my therapy appointment. Okay. And then underground parking, isn't that expensive?
Ridiculously
Why-
expensive.
Why are you doing that?
We really don't want to do it, but it's the only way we can meet any type of code. I mean, that's what really drove the code revisions was the parking. We couldn't make this project pencil, or Neil couldn't, without, getting some relief on the parking. And that relief, we're barely, making it right now. We're at 41 spaces. We're required 40 by our new affordable housing codes.
Mhm.
So.
I guess my question is, are you making the project extra expensive by proposing that underground parking? I mean.
Yeah. We are. long
Yeah.
story Short.
Yeah, and so, I mean, they're working hard to get grants and make this happen. I mean, this is what they do, like, across the country, so they're really working hard to finance all this. Yep.
All right, and then my last question is for Neil. So,
Now,
as I understand the
workforce.
LIHTC thing, you can't go over 60% AMI, so how are you financing 100% AMI units?
With 100 AMI units, we're going to be putting them in at the request of the county with a county subsidy to basically replace the LIHTC.
Okay, so you're really only going for the LIHTC for a portion of the project, and the rest is a county subsidy?
Well, the county is only 6 units. And and that hasn't been finalized, but it's a discussion that we've had. The county wanted to see if we could find some units for mental health providers who wouldn't, qualify for a 60% unit. And they were, the numbers that we submitted, had them essentially replacing the LIHTC for those units.
Okay, thank you for that. And because now I'm curious. So again, as I understand the LIHTC thing, they have their own covenant, right? That's in place, the land use regulatory agreement for 30 years. And are you keeping this in affordable in perpetuity with an extra covenant that goes in place after the 30 years? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, we have a covenant we will have a covenant from the town that if I understand the legalities of it, sort of springs up when LIHTC
And-
wears off.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of, if this is in the development agreement, I mean, I can read it, but I'm not, since I have you on the spot. What is the town subsidy on to this project? Is there a
$2.5
dollar amount?
million.
Is it water and sewer tap fees, building permitting fees? What is it?
$2.5 million.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, everybody. Those are my
Thank you.
questions.
So my questions are kind of on the structure of kind of tailing off of Lena's comments. So it sounds like there would be a priority for 6 units to Summit County. Have you gotten into is there a priority for Frisco employees? Like certain regulations you have to
we haven't really
follow?
gone into that. The county is, trying to figure out exactly, how it can do this. In light of the property tax legislation. So we haven't really gotten into any of that level of detail with them. Other than, where if they want to do it, we're happy to do it here. And that, I wish I'd give you more details on that, but there really aren't.
That's
I
all
think-
right. I figured we're pretty early in the
Oh.
stage.
But I did want to add, in talking with town council and business owners, we do recognize that there is a need for housing for workers in Frisco, and we are definitely able to affirmatively target market availability of units to different groups, including workers. So that's something that would be very easy for us to do regardless of the funding source.
Wonderful. And then my next question's for you, Suzanne, is we all know underground parking structures like to leak. This one's right on the river. So is there going to be mitigation efforts put in at the building beginning of the building, or, is sub pumps gonna be have to added later?
Yeah, no, we're definitely planning on sump pumps. I don't know if you've been in the garage of the cheese grater building, but it fills up with water like sometimes a year. So like there's an inch or two of water on the floor down there. So for sure we have a water issue. Our civil engineer's been working on that. And obviously all our engineers will be working with us on the waterproofing details and pumping of water for sure. 100%. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's all my questions. Are there additional questions for the applicant at this time? Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Megan and Suzanne. At this time, we will open tonight's agenda to the public. If you have public comment on this agenda item, now is your opportunity to speak. Either step up to the podium, state your name, address, keep your comments to 3 minutes would be appreciated. And if you're online, please raise your hand. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. Scott Holzer, 75B West Main Street, with a unit directly to the east of this property. I don't really have general comments. I more have specific questions, particularly when we're talking about the height and the bulk plane. I didn't understand everything that was just described. So are we basically measuring from the level of Main Street and 45 feet up? Am I understanding that correctly? Or are we measuring from the base of the existing building? Because that's about a 12-foot difference, which makes a substantial difference to us living next door as to a wall that we're going to be presented with. Not, again, not opposed to the project, just trying to understand what's going on.
Absolutely. Who wants to explain?
So Creekside, sorry. So I'm sorry, sir.
Sure.
So we're taking the height from basically Creekside. So yes, we would be allowed to go to that 49.5 feet up at Main Street, but we're not. The only portion of the building that we are doing that on is that center section. So I don't know if we could pull up maybe the west elevation or east elevation. And I
Yeah, the
could
east
point that out
elevation
to them.
is the one that's most critical to us.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to point out is that, that the hole is basically, there's going to be a deck. It's not going to be, you're not going to see a building from where the building currently is.
10 or something from Creekside.
The creek side, but we're on the east side here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enormous. That's enormous. And can we speak a little bit, please, to the public access to the river? Again, having the property right next door and with the 25-foot easement, I don't know how we maintain any sort of privacy in our backyard if we're encouraging, that much traffic heading from Main Street down to the river. It's really, unless you're going to landscape the river itself, it's not a good spot for river access because of the steepness of the bank and the number of trees that are there. So what is, what's being envisioned for that river access, please?
Turn that over to Megan.
Thank you.
Want to answer that? Thank you, Scott.
Good question, Scott. Thank you. Thanks for being here. In answer of the river access, right now, again, we are still in sketch plan and we're really, this is awkward because I'm like talking to you, but not looking at you.
Talk to him.
I'll do this sideways. So in answer of that, I think that the easement would be a public access easement. It would not necessarily be the 25 feet wide. That's the current setback. So I just want to make sure we get our easements language a little bit figured out. We would want to work with the town as to exactly what we envision there. We do envision a place where people could go to see and touch the water. And we'd want it to be in line with the trail plan that is the kind of guiding document for the town of Frisco. So as of right now, we don't have a super clear vision. We know that we just want to allow for future growth in that area. We don't have any major amenities or improvements in that area planned right now.
Thank you.
Are there additional members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item at this time? All right, I'm seeing none in the chambers. Anything online?
Doesn't look like it.
All right, I'm going to close the public comment portion of this agenda item, and we are going to move on to commissioner comments. Please refer back to your staff report in the things that they are seeking feedback. There's a nice list. So Ira, I'm going to start with you on your comments.
I'm very excited. It's early in the process, but it's very exciting, you know, to see the redevelopment of the cheese grater. That's a new word for me. I think that it has underground parking already discussed, so they have to expand, I guess, or dig more underground parking to meet the requirement that they're talking about, to fill the space of their construction. Does that sound correct?
I'm sorry, you said they'd have to fill in what?
No, there's a currently underground parking, but it seems to me that there will be more because the footprint of the new building is bigger, and I think underground parking will go under the entire building. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, you are correct. Currently, part of where we're gonna have parking is underground, not only the existing underground parking, but the parking in front of the building is below grade, and that will have to actually go down a couple more feet to make it a full story, full
Right.
deck there.
Yeah, that's what I envisioned. So I don't have any further comments or questions right now at this juncture. It's a preliminary look at it, and it's very exciting. I'd like to see how it moves along. Thank you.
And what are your thoughts, Ira, on kind of the materials and bulk plane
Well, I mean,
encroachments,
the bulk plan, I think after we went through the
additional
numbers,
uses?
I think for the bulk plane, it seems like they're within the numbers of the bulk plane. So I don't have a problem there. The parking abutting Main Street is, when we talk about that, that's the public street parking. And I think that we said that if they're going to use any of that for overnight, that would have to be an agreement with Public Works regarding snow removal and perhaps permitted parking. And I don't have a problem with that. Because and that part of Main Street, I also believe during the day, it's not limited. It's all day parking. It's not like further west. It's limited to 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't know if that section is at the 3-hour mark or if it's just.
No,
in the central core.
I'm just about positive. I think west of Madison, the 3-hour limit disappears.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that, but I don't have verification of that from anyone here.
And the conditional use, I mean, in order to make it work, I can see how they can't meet the statutory requirement of commercial space. Having the frontage, the front units that face Main Street being in commercial use, I think is the best way to meet that. And I don't have a problem with them allowing less than the 20%. I'm not sure about the loading facilities. Did we talk about that?
Not really.
And
It was mentioned in
is
the
that talking
staff
about
report.
like we're moving trucks and where
Right, just
items,
general-
commercial items will be unloaded on a
Just-
regular basis?
Yep, just general access and then access to the commercial spaces as well.
I have no comment on that. I mean, I don't really see any real problem because if they're coming off of Main Street, they'll be able to, you know, hand truck anything in. I believe the there are elevators, I think, in the center stack going up that feed the left and right units. The building elements, we don't see much of the building elements of finished materials. My question, if that was part of it, is that there would be some kind of impervious at the lower level where the structure meets grade, you know, so there's no rot or some kind of stone at the bottom. That would be my only, you know, comment there. There is a little bit, you know, they look like units. There is a little bit of repetitiveness, but I think that I think it kind of comes with the territory for such a big structure. I don't know how they're gonna efficiently and architecturally vary it a lot. I mean, when you look at this elevation, facing from Main Street, they're twin buildings, and I don't know if that's something that we've spoken about before, but I think in this particular case, it's the only way, I mean, without, it's acceptable to me that it looks like mirror sister buildings next to each other. There is, there can be perhaps a little bit more dressing up, but I don't want to drive the costs and push it out of the target of what we're trying to achieve. So I'm okay with the elevation. Like I said, I'd like to see that it's impervious material where the siding meets grade. And can you go back to that list one more time? The bulk plan I already talked about. I think they're within the numbers, and that I don't have a problem with that. And overall, I mean, the site plan, it's going to be a great addition, and part of that addition is the subtraction of that building, which is part of the gateway into Frisco. So I'm excited to see this project move forward.
Thank you, Ira. Lena, your feedback?
Yeah, thank you for finding a way to put this together. I'm in big support of the project. I think we need the housing. So that's awesome. In terms of the bonus density, if you can make it fit in there, then I'm in support of it. So no issue there. Parking abutting Main Street, I am still not 100% on that being for residential overnight parking or somehow assigned to the units in this complex. I would prefer to see that parking be used for the commercial needs of the project. So those are my comments there. I don't have an issue with the conditional use for a ground floor residential because it's in the back of the building, and it's also because it's affordable housing. And same thing with the 20%. I think you're providing some commercial uses adjacent to Main Street, and that to me is enough in exchange for affordable housing. So as to the access, I'm not sure. I think it's fine. Compliance with building envelope elements. I mean, as I mentioned, my only comment on the architecture, I like the architecture. I like where you're going there. I would like to see along Main Street a bigger emphasis on the entries to the commercial spaces, because it seems like it's hidden somehow, and I just want it to still look and feel like it's a mixed use building. And I don't know if you can do this, but do you have tiny windows along Main Street? I don't know if those windows can be made any bigger so that the facade is more just has more breaks in it, and window spaces. Compliance with design variety relating to duplicative design. I don't have an issue with that. Bulk plan encroachments, no issue there either. And I like the overall proposed site plan. I like the plaza space. I like the landscaping. I like the access to the river. Hopefully all of that is in compliance with your code. The one thing though, and I'm sure you guys are aware, that building's in the shadow of Mount Royal in the wintertime. So just whatever that means. I mean, half of the town is in the shadow of Mount Royal in the wintertime. So not my house, but anyway. Yeah, I'm super supportive of this project, really exciting. I'm glad you guys are bending over backwards to finance this. So looking forward to seeing it at the next step. Patrick.
I think my fellow commissioners have really stated a lot of my comments. The first quarter retail is an interesting story. So when I think about that, and no disrespect, but if they're healthcare providers, a big, huge glass storefront doesn't feel right to me. So I'm but on the other hand, if it turns into something else later, you don't want to be in the business of redoing it. It's different than the other project you guys brought to us, which is intended to be more retail. And if this truly is for mental health providers, I don't really have a problem with the way that it is right now because there's a privacy concern. And you don't want you and all your neighbors, you know, whatever, seeing you sit in the waiting room perhaps. The architecture for me being mirrored, just given the building typology is fine. Because there's a nice break in the middle and I like what you guys have done with the project, with this slot through there. I think that's really good. The parking is what it is. It has to be. And, I mean, I appreciate the investment for it. What I really appreciate is the number of units you guys are able to crunch out of this math equation. So that's really cool. I think that's really it. Thanks.
I would have to echo everyone else's sentiments. Thank you. This is what we've worked really hard for in our code to do. With that said, you know, we changed a lot of the code and said, oh, with rentals, we don't need as many parking. I do think you'll hear, I have nowhere for my boat. I have this. I mean, these are local people that come with a lot of toys. And so with that, I'm pretty strongly feel that you need to make it work if you think that they don't need parking, like not using those parking spots out front for residential. I'm comfortable with them being for commercial and having those bonuses and using that equation. But if you flip that equation, I'm not comfortable with that. I think that there's been a lot of incentives giving that's a slippery slope, just like the commercial can be a slippery slope. What you did on 80 West Main, it benefited a neighbor and it was beneficial and it worked. Here, we are creating this continuation zone or progression zone. I can't remember the terminology, but it's like, yeah, we've kind of let West Main die. So let's not continue that problem. But I think I'm comfortable with eliminating it, hearing it from you guys that this is how we get what we need so desperately, is to have to make some concessions. So I think you could address some of that duplicity with, like, I get what you're saying, but it's like, who knows who actually ends up in there? So make it work for them. And if they need to put up blinds, they put up blinds. But I think you can eliminate the duplicity a little bit by, adding some variations to the commercial frontage space. So I'm comfortable with that. My biggest sticking point is the parking and not, creating a problem for your existing neighbors. They already are having to deal with a large development coming in next to them, so making this pencil out so that it is usable and functioning and not impeding on our neighbors is critical, because we have a problem, but the solution shouldn't create new problems. So my biggest thing is the parking, but I'm comfortable with the bulk plane changes. I'd like to see a little bit more on the commercial element. I'm still a little hesitant on the site thing, that we're not, if it's in the code and it fits the code, I'm comfortable with it, but just to say, hey, we're not going from the bottom of where that existing grade is now for height seems inequitable to other projects that we've done. So that's where I'm still a little uneasy on the height, but I think it's a beautiful building. I love the plaza idea of opening up, more space, more air. But I'd have to agree with Scott on, you got to figure out what you're doing there. You can't just funnel people to the river to create a little transient park that we have on 3rd Avenue, behind the information center. It needs to not be impeding on other neighbors. It needs to be, well planned out. And if it's not, then maybe there isn't public access to the river. We have a wonderful park that there is. And so if this doesn't make sense, or if you run up against financial things, I think that should be the part that goes away, that, yeah, we're not trying to drive traffic to the neighborhood. It is we have parks for that. But those are my comments, and I'm really, really excited that hopefully we can get the funding for this and get it going. And hats off to Mr. Stabile and his design. So thank you, and we look forward to the next step.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners.
Any further updates?
Happy to answer questions. Do you guys have any questions about current development or?
No.
Okay.
Winter.
Plazas
called
for
Winter
sale?
Plaza. Oh, God.
What's that?
Or Venice used to be, Rainbow Court.
Active building permit. The foundation is in place. We don't know anything else
It's on the market.
on the market according to Kelsey.
Suzanne, you looking for another project? We'd like our hole filled in over there. I know, I miss it. Another great plaza. So you're recreating a new plaza though. No, do we have a motion to adjourn?
What about the Centura housing thing?
Haven't heard a word.
Okay.
Their permit or their planning approval would expire in February of 24.
Is that when they'd have to take the
Oh.
construction fencing down?
So the construction fencing we continue to ask them to take that down, but we're not getting any response. We're not getting anywhere with those guys. So if anybody has a lead on a better contact, we'll take it.
Aren't they building another project in town? Can we,
Different develop, David O'Neill's no longer associated with that project.
with which one?
Ventura Studios.
Hmm.
And now that's why we require an improvement agreement and cash bond before we let anybody put up fences. That was a difficult one though, because they already had a permit in place for the medical office building, but we should have required a security deposit on the adjacent lot.
Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right. Well, thank you again, Susan. You will be
Thank you
very much
guys.
missed. And I look forward to seeing you at the county.
Cause you're on the,
Yeah, we'll find you there.
the countywide or the 10 mile? 10 mile. Nice. Isn't Ira on one too?
I was on.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
that's awesome.